I didn't even get to sit down. Your position has been eliminated, Elena, Karen Voss announced without a glance. That same tight Botox smile stretched across her face like plastic wrap on yesterday's leftovers. The words bounced off the community center walls while 30 neighbors pretended to study their agendas. The projector hummed behind me. Mrs. Patel at the sign-in table actually gasped. Little Timmy from the kids' table froze mid-bite into a juice box. And there it was, a cardboard box already waiting on the folding chair beside the podium, perfectly pre-folded, tape-ready, like they'd rehearsed this humiliation over coffee and spreadsheet fines. That was the part that stung worse than the public execution. Not the stares, not even Karen's syrupy, it's for the good of the community tone. It was the planning. Someone had known. The entire board had known. They decided weeks ago while I was still mowing my lawn to the exact HOA-approved 2.5 inches. I didn't speak. I didn't ask why. I didn't beg for a private meeting like the last poor soul they'd crucified for hanging an American flag 2 inches too wide. I just reached for the black ceramic mug my dad gave me the day I moved in. White letters still readable after 7 years. I build things that last. The handle was chipped from the time Karen made me haul it upstairs during one of her workflow disruptions, because community events must run like a Fortune 500. Beside it sat the flash drive nobody ever asked about and the framed photo of Dad at the old construction site, smiling in front of the crane that helped pour the foundations of this very neighborhood. My hand stayed steady. Not shaking. Not cold. Just still, the way a deer freezes when the hunter steps on the twig. I packed everything, clicked the lid shut, gave one nod to little Timmy who looked ready to cry, and walked out. If you're still here, smash that subscribe button and drop a like. It really does keep these stories alive. I didn't cry in the hallway. I didn't cry when my key fob beeped red for the first time in 6 years at the gate. I didn't even cry when I passed the community garden I'd planted myself. The one Karen had once called an eyesore because the tomatoes weren't in approved earth tone planters. But I did let one quiet tear fall when I got home, sat on the floor of my living room, and stared at the box. Not because I was broken, because I knew they'd just made the worst mistake of their manicured lives. See, Karen Voss didn't know what I'd built while she was busy color-coding violation notices and hiring consultants with TikTok bios. While the board obsessed over whether wind chimes counted as noise pollution, I'd quietly coded the entire HOA portal, the payment system, the violation tracker, the anonymous complaint form they loved weaponizing. None of it belonged to them. They saw me as background noise. The quiet one who fixed the app when it glitched, trained new volunteers without being asked, stayed late rewriting the fine schedule so it actually made sense. They thought quiet meant disposable. They never understood quiet means calculating. Quiet means watching every crack in their ridiculous empire and memorizing exactly how wide those cracks could open. At 4:13 p.m., the board's secretary texted. I let it go to voicemail. At 4:27, an email with exit interview in the subject. Deleted. At 5:06 p.m., Karen herself called from a blocked number. This time I picked up. Elena, we really need to clarify intellectual property boundaries on the portal, she said in that fake concerned voice she used right before she fined someone $500 for unapproved holiday lights. I told her I was busy. She didn't push. By 6:42 p.m., I changed my number. By 7:03 p.m., someone was pounding on my door like they were trying to break in. I peeked through the hole and saw Harold Concade, the HOA treasurer, red-faced, tie crooked, forehead glistening. I didn't open it. I just poured a glass of wine, pulled up the live dashboard I'd kept hidden for years, and smiled. My system. My rules. They had no idea what was coming. It started the morning after. I sat at my kitchen table in my robe, laptop humming, coffee going cold, half-eaten toast trembling from how fast my fingers flew. I wasn't angry. Rage burns out. I wanted something slower, something that lasted longer than Karen's fake smile. So I opened the folders I'd compiled over 6 years. Notes, sketches, bug reports, process maps the board had once called Elena's little side puzzles. Except those puzzles ran the entire neighborhood. Willow Creek never understood that good infrastructure isn't flashy. It's precise, elegant, invisible until it disappears. I started sketching the bones of something new. No legacy rules. No bloated fine schedules. No Karen breathing down everyone's neck asking if the data could be more fun. I called it Coral Inn after the quiet street Dad used to park on when he took me to the old construction yard. Gritty. Efficient. Honest. I coded through the winter, ate too much ramen, forgot to pay my internet bill twice. I borrowed $5,000 from an old friend who only asked one question. Is this finally yours? By the end of year one, I had a working prototype and a quiet test contract with a small gated community 2 towns over. They didn't care I was working from my kitchen. They cared that Coral Inn caught a faulty violation loop, draining them $19,000 a month in bogus fines. Year 2 word spread. Never advertised, just delivered. I onboard 2 more neighborhoods, both direct competitors of Willow Creek. One even emailed me a spreadsheet saying, "Hey, this looks like something your old HOA used to use, just way better." I smiled at that one for a full minute. But I didn't gloat. Not even when I heard Karen bragging at the regional HOA convention about their state-of-the-art enforcement suite that still ran on an Excel plugin I wrote in 2019 and they never bothered to update. I could have called them out. I could have gone public. But visibility attracts noise, and noise ruins precision. Every update I pushed to Coral Inn came from something Willow Creek wouldn't let me fix. Every ugly workaround they forced on me became a clean module here. I designed it like an engineer, but also like a survivor. No single point of failure. No reliance on flaky board approvals. Absolutely no way to be ripped off without me knowing. I kept it lean, scaled carefully, quietly. I learned to listen before speaking, measure before striking. Coral Inn wasn't a company. It was a scalpel, and I had no interest in swinging wildly. My father noticed first. We talked every Sunday. He'd ask how I was going, and I'd say steady. One night he said, "Your voice sounds like when you used to build toy bridges out back." Focused. Dangerous. I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. I wasn't trying to destroy Willow Creek. I was trying to replace it. One quiet vote at a time. It was a Tuesday morning when I saw the brief buried in the weekly industry digest, wedged between fluff pieces about disruptive landscaping and the rise of drone delivery for violation notices. There it was, Willow Creek HOA board to evaluate strategic management proposals in Q3. Companies shift hands all the time, but I'd learned to read between the lines. Strategic proposals was code for sinking ship. I could practically hear Harold's voice. "We'll never need outside help. We're bulletproof." Funny. Nothing bleeds faster than arrogance in a cul-de-sac. I pulled up 3 monitors, financials, violation data, resident complaints. They were hemorrhaging, slowing recruitment of volunteers, backfilled board seats, rising attrition. Their VP of compliance had left 6 months ago, quietly. I found her LinkedIn buried under hashtags. She was now running enforcement for a community I'd onboarded 6 weeks earlier. Their customer, resident, churn rate had doubled. Why? Because 3 of their biggest complainers had quietly sold and moved to neighborhoods running Coral Inn. They didn't even know they'd been poached. They'd spent thousands trying to pivot into AI-powered violation detection. The systems didn't talk. I recognized half the errors, repackaged versions of bugs I'd flagged years ago that Karen told me to stop obsessing over. Now, those same bugs were dragging the whole neighborhood underwater. So I made one call to a boutique law firm I'd helped during Coral Inn's second round. All I said was, "How fast can you incorporate a shell with a neutral name and quiet money?" By Friday, Lisa Holdings LLC had submitted a formal expression of interest to the Willow Creek board. Clean language. Standard structure. Just enough teeth to make them blink. It looked like an equity firm out of Raleigh. Strong enough to be real, bland enough to be forgettable. But it was me. The offer was priced just slightly above their current valuation. Enough to make the board salivate, not enough to scream desperation. The board would see salvation. Karen would see her throne saved. what none of them would see, yet, was the footnote reserving all technology assessment rights to a third-party consultant. And I already knew exactly who that consultant would be. I wasn't coming back to gloat. I wasn't coming back for applause. I was coming back to dissect the neighborhood that tried to erase me, piece by ridiculous piece. No one suspected a thing. Not the board. Not the residents. Especially not Karen. That was the part one couldn't wait for. The badge they printed for me said LEL. Not Elena. Not MS. Lang. Just Ellie. White sticker slapped crooked onto cheap plastic like someone had applied it during a sneeze. Role, contractor, compliance audit support. Not even full temp staff. No welcome email. No bio in the monthly newsletter. Just a desk shoved near the recycling bins and a chair that creaked every time you breathed. Perfect. I wore wire-rimmed glasses that weren't prescription. Dyed my hair 2 shades darker. Swapped my usual boots for bland sneakers and kept my shoulders slouched just enough to look forgettable. I even pitched my voice a touch higher and breathier when I introduced myself. No one blinked. No one stared. They didn't even ask what I used to do. First day, Karen Voss walked right past me. She was too busy fake laughing with some junior board member about streamlining headcount. I kept my face neutral, nodding politely when she brushed by like I was wallpaper. She had no clue. The same woman who'd escorted me out 3 years ago now stood 6 feet away and offered me a granola bar like I was some lost intern. When she dropped the first audit folder on my desk, she didn't even look me in the eye. Just sighed and muttered, "Don't mess this up. We're already 2 days behind on the new fence height violations." "Yes, ma'am," I said without flinching. They had no idea. I started combing through the data like a surgeon. License violations on paper only. Redundant vendor payouts. Overlapping software contracts billed to 5 different committees. And most damning, 2 backdated compliance audits with signatures that didn't match timestamps. I knew exactly what to look for. I'd reverse engineered their rot from the outside for years. Now I had it at the source. At lunch I sat alone with plastic chicken noodle. The cafeteria hadn't changed. Same vending machine buzz. Same broken clock stuck at 12:04 like time itself had given up. I kept my ears open. People talk freely around contractors. And then I heard it. Harold, loud as ever, nursing an overpriced smoothie, bragging to 2 board liaisons in the corner. Remember Elena? The quiet one who wanted to rewrite our whole rulebook? Fired her right before the AI wave hit. Saved us a fortune. One of them laughed. Close call. Harold sipped. Yeah, good riddance. She wouldn't have lasted anyway. My spoon paused halfway to my mouth. Quiet rage tastes like metal. I smiled into my soup. I didn't react. Because in 3 days the consultant from Lisa Holdings would arrive for tech due diligence. And when they did, they'd asked to meet the internal audit contractor who discovered multiple process anomalies. That contractor would be me. And the man sipping kale while rewriting my obituary would finally learn ghosts don't stay quiet forever. The days bled together like a metronome. Click. Extract. Zip. Send. I came in early, left late, never complained. To everyone else, I was just another replaceable temp hoping for a full-time slot. They didn't know I already owned the lock they were trying to pick. Karen kept handing me files like she was doing me a favor. Unaware, she was handing me the keys to her own little kingdom. I never requested access. I just quietly found the back doors, passwords on sticky notes, permissions left wide open because the board already approved it. I didn't need a hack. They'd been leaving the vault open for years. I simply walked in and took inventory. The first folder I compiled, I titled Deadwood. A graveyard of inactive vendors, fake contractor invoices, shell account payments that hadn't been flagged in over a year. Total waste, $2.3 million. I found 6 software licenses still billing monthly to terminated volunteer accounts. One of them belonged to a woman who'd passed away 18 months ago, obituary still online, yet her account kept pulling a full enforcement budget. Next came patchwork. Dozens of compliance logs that looked fine until you noticed audit trails overwritten, timestamps that didn't line up, digital fingerprints wiped, but not perfectly. Everything was zipped, encrypted, transferred to a fresh server under a throwaway alias with a VPN so clean it could pass airport security. From there, the bundle went straight to the board. Anonymous, of course, but specific enough to prove insider access. I timed the email for 4:01 a.m., just after East Coast board members woke up and before Harold's gatekeeping admin started filtering. By the time I walked into the office that morning, Karen's jaw was locked so tight, I thought she'd crack crown. She wasn't sure what had hit her, only that it stung. While they flailed, Lisa Holdings quietly submitted an amended bid, down 12%, citing recently uncovered compliance concerns that may impact long-term valuation. The phrasing was surgical. The board wouldn't pull out, not when the roof was on fire and Lisa was the only buyer not demanding a fire sale discount. But they'd have to explain it internally. That explanation would cost more than money. Meanwhile, I made 2 side calls, one to Riverbend Estates, one to Eastern Spoke. Both former Willow Creek clients. Both had left after Karen's latest wave of aesthetic violations. Both had tested Coraline in sandbox trials. Neither had signed yet. Today they did. Clean contracts. Multi-year. Scale pricing that made Willow Creek's renewal attempts look like highway robbery. By lunch, Coraline had on board $4.8 million in projected annual flow. No press releases, just small ripples under the surface. I sat at my desk, sipping cold tea, watching Karen storm from meeting to meeting with a scowl that could curdle milk. She passed me twice, never looked up. Still didn't know my name. Still didn't know I had cut every anchor she'd tied herself to. Every move I made had rhythm. Not jazz. Not chaos. Orchestra. And I was conducting the whole damn pit. It started with a calendar change, the kind that sneaks in without a chime. Just a new red block at 7:30 a.m. Titled Urgent Strategic Session. Only board names on the invite except mine. I wasn't supposed to see it, but Karen had forwarded me the wrong version of a deck earlier, and her Google permissions were still wide open. The office pulsed with tension. People whispered in corners. Printers stuttered. The elevator dinged too loud. Harold hadn't shown up for his morning smoothie walk. That alone meant blood. I kept my head down, moving like a ghost. Everyone was too distracted to notice me weaving through the office. When the VP of operations darted out of a meeting room pale as drywall and muttered, "We have to clean this up before Lisa walks in," I knew my file had landed. 10 minutes later, Karen popped her head over my cubicle like a meerkat who just smelled fire. "Hey, can you help prep slides for the meeting? Executive deck. We're crunched. Don't format it fancy, just clean and quick, contractor style." Contractor style. I nodded like a good little temp and opened a blank PowerPoint. They wanted numbers. I gave them numbers. I recreated their financials line by exposed line. Charts showing how resident churn aligned perfectly with every petty rule change. Legal exposure risks outlined without editorializing. All clinical. All sharp. Then at the end, just one extra slide. Black background, white text, centered. Eliminate what you don't understand. Expect the unfamiliar to own you. No name. No signature. Just the kind of message that digs under skin and rattles bones. I saved it under the vanilla name Q3 Strategic Update, Eve, final.pptx, and handed it off like any other grunt. Karen barely looked up from her tablet. "Thanks, Ellie." They still call me Ellie. That night, I drove home in silence. No music, just tires on cracked asphalt and a heart beating like clockwork. I passed the old construction yard my dad used to work at, still dark, still abandoned, still his ghost in every corner. I parked, poured a drink I didn't sip, and finally, after 3 years, called him. "Hey," I said, voice steady. He knew immediately. "Kiddo, you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad." "Don't check the headlines tomorrow." Pause. Then a smile I could hear. "Angela, wait till noon." Quiet pride. The kind only a man who's lived through layoffs, and broken promises can feel when he hears his daughter leveling the ground. The boardroom the next morning was too quiet. That sterile silence that smells like air conditioning and fear. Leather chairs pulled tight. Mineral water lined up like soldiers. They dimmed the lights slightly, probably hoping the numbers would sting less. Karen sat near the end, arms crossed, so tight her veins showed. Harold bounced his leg like it owed him money. The board chair cleared his throat. Let's bring in the Lisa rep. The door opened. Click, click, click. 3 strides and I was in. Tailor navy jacket, hair tied back, minimal makeup, the kind of look that doesn't scream money, it whispers command. I walked straight to the head of the table, set the thick envelope on the polished wood, and looked each one of them in the eye. The CFO choked on her lemon water. Elena, I smiled. Not smug. Surgical. Correction, I said calmly, flipping the folder open to the executed merger terms. Majority shareholder. Dead silence. Then Karen, still catching up, stammered, I don't understand. Of course you don't, I replied. That's the pattern, isn't it? You eliminate what you don't understand, then panic when it walks back through the door holding the deed. Harold's jaw flexed. This is a hostile move. No, I said. This is a lawful acquisition facilitated by a holding entity your own counsel cleared. You signed off, Harold. Page 7, just above the clause about executive reevaluation during leadership transition, including terminations. He lunged forward. You lied. You infiltrated. I audited, I said. You handed me the spreadsheets. Karen looked like she'd swallow glass. I stood straighter. Let them feel the shift, the snap of old bones resetting. Oh, and I'll be rehiring someone. Karen looked up like a drowning woman spotting land. His name's Edmund Lang. Harold's mouth opened then froze. You fired him 7 years ago, I added. Said he was outdated. But he taught me everything I know about building from the inside, about keeping things running when leadership doesn't understand the system they're steering. The boardroom doors opened again, and my father walked in, gray hair slicked back, blue work shirt, rough hands folded in front of him. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He looked around at the executives who once told him to clear out before lunch and said with calm certainty, looks like I'm back. You could hear Harold's heart cracking beneath the silence. The same man who once told my dad he was lucky to even get severance now couldn't lift his eyes off the floor. Karen tried to speak, but her voice caught like it recognized the sound of consequences. I turned to the board. This isn't revenge. It's restoration. You broke something that worked, and now we're rebuilding it. My father stepped beside me. I slid the second folder across the table. His reinstatement terms with backdated pension reconciliation. First order of business, I said. We fixed the foundation. The room stayed frozen, but inside me everything was moving again. Security entered without a sound. 2 men in dark suits, no badges, no words. Harold sat blinking like maybe this was all a mistake. But when one guard placed a hand gently but firmly on the back of his chair, reality finally soaked through his collar. He stood stiffly, adjusted his jacket, tried to speak. Gentlemen, this is highly irregular. You signed a clause, I said, not unkindly. Section 12.2 of the acquisition. Change in majority ownership allows executive restructuring without notice. You approved it during due diligence. Page 17. I highlighted it in yellow. Karen, looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. Harold didn't scream, didn't beg. He just looked around at faces that no longer met his and let the final truth sink in. No one was coming to save him. He walked out without a word. The door closed behind him with a soft click louder than thunder. I let the silence breathe. Then I turned to the board. You had talent. You had loyalty. You had infrastructure that ran clean. But you didn't want durable. You wanted shiny. Quick wins. Flashy rules. People who looked good on the podium. A few shifted in their seats. You chose vanity, I said, and it cost you. I didn't raise my voice. Every syllable landed like glass tapping porcelain. One board member, the one who used to walk past me without eye contact, cleared his throat. Miss Lang, why didn't you just come in through the front door? If you had this vision, why not pitch it? Why not knock? I turned slowly and let my eyes settle on the exact spot at the far end of the table where I once stood holding that cardboard box while people avoided looking up. Because the front door leads to Karen, I said. And she never called me back. You could hear a pin drop. Another board member exhaled sharply, but no one laughed. This wasn't funny. It was arithmetic. Cause, effect, action, consequence. I walked around the table calmly. From this point on, we're rebuilding. Not with the same titles, not with the same habits. We do this lean, clean, and quiet, the way it should have been from start. No one objected. Not even Karen. I looked at her. She still hadn't moved, still hadn't figured out whether to beg or vanish. I didn't tell her what her future held. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder. Fallout isn't always fire. Sometimes it's just silence where the noise used to be. The door to my new office didn't have my name on it. No title, just clean frosted glass that blurred the edges and kept the noise out. Beyond the far window, the neighborhood hummed with steady rhythm. Lawn mowers at reasonable hours, kids riding bikes without violation notices taped to their handlebars, people actually talking to each other instead of reporting each other. I'd chosen this office on purpose. It wasn't the corner suite with the fake plants. It had a direct line of sight to the community, to the systems that kept us honest. The desk was simple. Laptop, notepad, soft tick of an analog clock. My phone was off. No texts, no congratulations, just silence. And I liked it that way. Then came a knock. I looked up and smiled before he even opened the door. Dad stepped in holding something wrapped in a small dish towel. He crossed the room in those old work boots and placed the bundle gently on the desk. I unwrapped it. The mug, black ceramic, chipped handle, the one I'd packed the day they tried to erase me. He sat across from me, took in the space, the lack of flash, the presence of purpose. This feels right, he said. I nodded. Took a while. He smiled, picked up the mug, turned it in his hand like a bookmark in time. Now you've built something they can't erase. That hit harder than anything. Not dramatic, true. They try to make me small, disposable, easier to ignore. Every rejection sharpened the blade. Every silence gave me space to build. I never wanted applause. Never needed revenge. I just needed to outlast their ignorance. And I had. The neighborhood had a new name now, Coralline Community Association, and a new culture. The rot was gone. The people who mattered were back. We hired slow. We listened. No more vanity rules about paint shades or flag widths. Just systems that ran quietly, efficiently, respectfully. When Dad left the room, I stayed seated, looked out at the street again, watched a new resident struggling to hang a simple bird feeder. Another neighbor stepped in without hesitation to help. No supervisors. No orders. Just instinct. That was what we were rebuilding. And this time it would hold. The mug sat warm in my hands. And somewhere far off, I could still hear Karen pounding on my apartment door 3 years ago, begging to understand what I'd done. I hadn't done anything extraordinary. I just waited for them to clear the space. Then, like always, I built. They thought they eliminated me. But all they did was clear the way. The first Monday, under new management, the neighborhood woke up different. No violation notices flapping on doors like yellow caution tape. No Karen cruising the streets in her golf cart with a clipboard of doom. Just quiet. Real quiet. The kind that lets people breathe. I stood at the community center entrance watching residents trickle in for the first open forum. No agenda pre-approved by a dictator. No dress code. No please silence your phones or face a $25 fine. Just folding chairs arranged in a circle and a coffee pot that actually had real cream instead of the powdered sadness Karen used to provide. My father stood beside me in his new role, head of grounds and infrastructure, wearing the same blue work shirt he'd worn the day they fired him 7 years ago. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. The way he nodded at every neighbor who shook his hand said everything. Karen's former second-in-command tried to slink in late, still clutching her old rule book like a security blanket. I watched her eyes dart around the room, searching for the old power structure. It wasn't there. She sat down slowly, like the chair might bite her. When it was her turn to speak, she opened her mouth, closed it, then finally managed, "I just wanted to say the new portal is really user-friendly." The room didn't applaud. They just nodded. Polite. Final. The way you acknowledge a ghost that's finally learned it's dead. Later that afternoon, I walked the perimeter with Dad. The grass was still 2.5 inches, not because the rule demanded it, but because the new landscaping crew actually cared. Someone had planted sunflowers along the fence line, where Karen once banned anything taller than 18 inches. A little boy rode his bike past us, American flag fluttering from the handlebars, the same flag that once earned his parents a $300 citation. He waved. We waved back. No clipboard. No camera. Just neighbors. Inside the office, I opened the old violation ledger one last time. Page after page of absurd fines. $50 for excessive holiday cheer, $75 for unapproved mailbox color, $200 for suspected political expression. I closed it, carried it to the shredder, and fed every page through. The machine hummed like it was sighing in relief. When the last strip fell, I felt the final knot loosen in my chest. That evening I sat on my porch, the same porch Karen once threatened to fine because my potted plants were 2 shades too vibrant. A neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years walked by with her dog. She paused, smiled, and said, "Heard you fixed the gate system. My package actually arrived on time today." Thank you. Simple. Honest. The kind of thank you Karen never allowed because gratitude belonged to her alone. I poured a glass of wine and raised it toward the quiet street. Not in triumph. In quiet satisfaction. The mug from Dad sat beside me on the railing, chipped handle catching the last of the sunset. I build things that last, it still read. And for the first time in years, I believed it. Somewhere across town, I knew Karen was sitting in her perfectly staged living room. The one with the HOA-approved beige walls and the single tasteful wreath, staring at her phone, refreshing the community forum that no longer answered to her. She'd lost the only thing that ever gave her power, control over people who were too afraid to speak. Now the only thing left was silence. And the slow, delicious realization that the quiet one she tried to erase had quietly rebuilt everything, better, stronger, and completely out of her reach. I took a sip of wine and smiled at the sunset. The neighborhood lights came on one by one, warm, golden, unregulated. No timers, no fines, just homes, just people, just life the way it was always supposed to be before Karen decided she owned the sunset too. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I could still hear her voice from that final board meeting, small and cracking. But the rules I didn't answer then. I don't need to now. The rules are gone. The neighborhood is finally home. If you made it this far, you already know how good it feels when the bully loses everything. Drop a comment with your own HOA horror story. I read every single one. And remember, the quiet ones are always watching, always building, always waiting for the perfect moment to hand the clipboard back with a smile. See you in the next one. Stay quiet. Stay dangerous. Stay free.